Welcome back. I'm gonna finish this project up so that I can do other stuff. But I took the big flattening bit out of the router. I used 2 bits. This is from Whiteside. They make amazing bits. They're super, super sharp. They do cost a little bit more, but you definitely get what you pay for. And I also use Freud. So this is a 1/4 inch round over bit. This is what I'm gonna put in there, throw that in the router table and round over all of these edges. All right, so I've got the bit in here. I took the fence off. One thing that you need to do with these round over bits is to make 100% sure that it sits flush right there. If it's too high, it's gonna cause the round over to make a mark in the bottom. It's called something specific, but it's ugly and I don't want it. So I made sure that it's flat enough. You could use tools, most people do, to measure the height and things like that. I go by feel. Your fingers can feel something ridiculous, like 1/64 of an inch difference, or maybe even more than that. Don't quote me. So that's good enough for what I'm using it for. These Bosch routers, they have the variable speed control. So I'm setting it at about 3.5. You set the speed by the size of the bit. This isn't a very big bit, and the woods that I'm using should be fine at this speed. It does require a bunch of trial and error. I've ruined a bunch of wood trying to figure out a good router speed, but this should work here. I'm gonna round all these corners off real quick and then sand. The round over is done all the way around this guy. So good 1/4 inch round over. Now to sand the heck out of this thing, make it nice and perfectly flat. This part's real boring, so I'm gonna time lapse it as fast as I can. Also, always unplug your tools as soon as you're done with them. If you get your finger caught in this thing while it's on, you won't have fingers anymore. All right, so I noticed after rounding over that I got a bit of tear out on this part where the mahogany meets the cherry. So what I'm gonna do is actually what I did here. So this is actually black rubberized super glue from Starbond. So what I do is I'm gonna put the super glue here, spray the accelerator on here, it cures immediately, and then I'll be able to sand it down so that it fills that crack and should look just that pretty whenever I'm done. Just again, an extra step. Woodworking is mainly just fixing all the mistakes you make, and I make a lot of them. All right, wait 15 seconds, and that should cure all the way down there. All right, so I knocked this all down to 80 grit. One thing I wanted to make sure to do was blend in the routing. Otherwise, it just kind of abruptly stops, and then this is flat. So took that 80 grit with my hand, rounded it over, and just kind of made it nice and even all the way around. Filled in our glue spot right there. So I'll keep sanding it down, and it'll just kind of flow. So I'm gonna take it to 120 grit, then 220, then I'll go from there and I'll show you what I do next. These little bench cookies from Rockler are super cheap. I think they're like 10 bucks for 4 of them, but that's what I'm using so that this stays put when I am sanding. I used to just put it on the table and my whole table would shake and stuff would go all over the place, falling on the floor. So definitely recommend these if you are doing any sanding. So I took this down to 220 and right now it is as smooth as can be. But I don't want to soak it in oil just yet because if I do, all of the grain in the wood is going to soak that back up and it's not going to be smooth anymore. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean the dust off of this, but I'm also going to raise the grain a little bit by pouring some denatured alcohol on there. It's going to raise the grain really quick and evaporate super fast. That way I can re-sand it after I get the grain up and then soak it in oil tonight. So I'm gonna do that really quick and then we should be good to go. All right, so we wiped off our board. We got all the dust off so you can see all the dust from the mahogany over there. Another great use for the alcohol is these will start to get super dusty and the only way to clean them is with that. So you just rub them on there on both sides and they'll take off the majority of the dust. And again, it evaporates super fast. The only thing is if you have any cuts or scrapes or splinters in your hands, it's going to hurt real bad. So now that we've raised the grain, you can't see it because it's at a almost microscopic level, but there are just a tiny bit of raised wood grains here. So I'm going to take the 320 grit sandpaper by hand, and I'm just going to do a once over. You go with the grain here on both sides and on the edges, and then we'll be ready to oil it up. All right, so I moved my bench back because it's going to sit here for the next 24 hours. I sanded this all the way back down to 320 grit, which means that it's once again incredibly smooth. What I'm going to use is walrus oil cutting board oil. So you see it's food grade. There's no walrus in there. It's coconut oil, beeswax, mineral oil, vitamin E. So I'm going to soak this on here for 24 hours. After that, I'm gonna wipe the excess away, and then I'm gonna use the cutting board wood wax to really keep it safe here. So whenever I sell this, whoever is the lucky recipient, they will have something that is completely safe to use with their food and should last them quite some time. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour this oil on here, and you're gonna really see the grain and the colors finally pop on this thing. All right, so you don't need too terribly much of this stuff. I'm just going to put a little bit on there on this first side, and I'm gonna start rubbing that in there. Depending on how dry this wood is, it's going to either soak up really fast and I'm gonna have to apply another coat, or it should be good. So we'll see. It's probably going to be pretty thirsty. The mahogany is pretty porous, so it will soak up quite a bit of oil there. All right, and I'm going to flip this over, put it on these paint pedestals here, get the other side and the edges here, and then let it soak for 24 hours. So my poorly lit garage is probably not doing this justice here, but you can see now that the oil is soaked in This looks much different than when I was sanding it and making it as dull as humanly possible. Now we're getting some really good pop and color there from the cherry, the maple, Peruvian walnut, African mahogany, and some Honduran mahogany in there. So we're gonna let this set. I'll let it set till the morning. Right before I go to work, I will check it and make sure that it's soaked in and it looks good. I'll apply another coat if I need to. And then tomorrow night, I'll put that wood wax on there and we'll sell this little fancy bread or cheese board, or really whatever you want to use it for. Welcome back. So we've been soaking this for about 20 hours in that walrus oil, cutting board oil here. So it's soaked in real good. I came out this morning, there weren't any dry spots, so I didn't have to reapply anything here. And then especially I'm gonna be applying this cutting board wax just in a second here. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe down the excess, if there is any on here, and then I'm gonna apply that wood wax. All right, so I coated a nice, decent amount of that wood wax for cutting boards. Again, there's nothing in there that's too crazy. It's beeswax, coconut oil, mineral oil, vitamin E. So I put that on there. We're gonna let it sit for 15 minutes. And normally you buff it out afterwards. I don't have anything special to buff with, but I picked these up at Lowe's. You can probably get them anywhere. 3M Final finishing pads. These are amazing. They do buff. It's so much easier than what I was doing, which was just taking a paper towel and trying to buff off by hand, which was stupid. These were like $3 and make my life way easier. So I'm gonna wait that 15 minutes, buff them off, then it'll be good to go. And whoever wants to buy it, you are more than welcome to buy it. All right, so we buffed off the wax with those finishing pads over there. This should keep it good and protected for quite some time. When I do sell these, I do let these people know about these products. You know, they do get used, they do get scratched, they get cut marks in them. Just reapplying some oil and wax every once in a while really helps these out. You don't stick them in the washing or the dishwasher. You don't soak them in water or anything like that. You really just kind of wipe them off with a damp cloth and call it a day. So again, this one here will be up for sale. And I'm going to take a picture in a little bit and give you the dimensions.